Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Chris, where we try to provide you with as much free information relating to legal, financial, healthcare advocacy issues as possible. And I'm excited to have our guest on today. She is an author. She runs a website, advocateformomanddad.com, which provides information for caregivers and their families. She's a certified caregiving consultant, certified dementia practitioner. She has an MA in leadership and supervision. Debra Hallisey, welcome to the program today.
Oh, thanks so much, Chris, for having me. I'm really excited we're going to get a chance to talk today.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this one. This one's great. So I'd like to start off you wrote a book, right? Your caregiver relationship contract. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and the purpose behind it, what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, I will. So it's based on what I've learned the last 6 years as a caregiver, first my dad and first for my mom. And the thing that I really was surprised by is how much caregiving changes relationships, and not just the one you're doing with the relationship with the person you're caring for, but it changes every relationship in your life. I'll give you a little story about that, what I mean by that. And let me also just say, here's a really good example, because when you think about a relationship and in changing, people are like, well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. So let's just say that someone is in a relationship, they're married, and one of them in that marriage loses a lot of weight. And because of that, they no longer want to go out to dinner as often, or maybe don't want to go to the movies because that means popcorn and it's going to put their weight loss in jeopardy. And that's because when I think about a relationship is, what are the things you're willing to do and not do for one another? How do you show love and support for one another? What social activities bind your relationship together? So up until that point in that relationship, both people were willing to go out to dinner and have wine and wonderful meal. And when that changed, the person who no longer was willing to do that kind of changed the dance of the relationship, right? And took away what was a social activity. And that other person may no longer feel loved and supported because that was a big part of their relationship. So when something changes, whether it's a weight loss or you suddenly become a caregiver, the entire relationship will change, and the way you relate to one another will change as well. And so kind of when I realized that, and really the book is based off of about 5 or 6 blog posts that really resonated with my readers. And I kind of went, okay, I want to share what I've learned over the last 6 weeks.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So relate that to caregiving, and when one person gets ill in a relationship, as you gave an example, how does that dynamic change? How does that, not that it's a burden, but there's a lot of additional responsibilities shift onto the other person. And then in addition to the families, which we'll talk about too, but then, what are the things that person now feels and has to perform as far as taking care of that person that has become ill?
Yeah, there's so many interesting pieces to that question, Chris. So I can just speak from my personal experience and from when I've talked to other people and my clients and all. So in the beginning, caregiving is often support. It's going to the grocery store. It's going with them to the doctors, right? Maybe it's picking up, mowing the lawn because they no longer do it. And so those are tasks that maybe you never had to do, be responsible for. And even if you don't physically do them, chances are you're responsible for finding the person who will, the person who's going to support you in that and do that. But as someone who ages or is ill and time goes on, chances are really good you're going to wind up picking up physical tasks for the person. For my mom, because she's legally blind with mobility issues, not only do I help around the house, but I have to put her shoes on. I have to turn the shower on and make sure that she's in it and she's safe while she's in it. And, she recently had a wound we had to take care of. So now one of the things that's happening is you're in a role you never were before. And the mistake many caregivers make is you start to what I call parent your parent or your loved one. And that's a huge mistake because they're not your child, they're an adult. So, when my mom started to need help taking a shower, it was embarrassing for her. And it was embarrassing for me. It was a change in the way we related to one another. And so I was very deliberate about saying, so mommy, how can I help you? Like, what do you need me to do for you? And she's like, well, let's try doing this and then leave me alone. And then I can get into my room and I can change. So it was an honest conversation about what help she needed and then how I could preserve her dignity and her adulthood. And I think that's true of many things. The wound happened in the start of COVID-19. And so we had to have a discussion about, did you go to the doctors or not? Because the wound care doctor was in the hospital, and she was really nervous about that. And it took an open and honest conversation about, but mom, you're a diabetic. This is not something we can play with. We really need to take care of this. And what's the safety precautions? How will you feel safe doing this? So I think the biggest thing to understand is that caregiving is such an emotional thing. And as you start to take over tasks that maybe are a little bit more personal than they ever were before, or make one or the other uncomfortable, it's really important that you have those conversations in a loving way. But I will also say, as a caregiver, it's really important to recognize that maybe some of the emotions that are coming up is your inner 8-year-old rebelling again. Right? Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm always trying to think, what do I own in this? And how can I not let that inner 8-year-old roar out? That was the biggest surprise. It was more not around the physical thing, but the emotions, the past it brought up, and having to have those really hard conversations.
So you brought up the pandemic. How has the pandemic How's that affected with social distancing? How has that affected the relationship? Has it affected the relationship? Or how has it affected the entire family, if it's not even an immediate family, the more distant family relationships and people being able to visit and social interaction and those types of things?
Yeah, I have to tell you, it's been a challenge. I mean, I will share with you that my mom has a live-in caregiver when I'm not with her, and I'm with her every other weekend from Thursday through Sunday, sometimes a little further into the week if the caregiver needs to do something. And when this happened, mom and I really sat down and talked about, do we keep the caregiver? Like what is the risk we're willing to take? And so I had an honest conversation with the caregiver about what we were doing. Now, she has been her live-in for a number of years, so we know her. She doesn't drive. She lives on her own. The only person she really sees is her daughter. So in that conversation, we talked about what precautions she was going to take and what precautions we were going to take. And our ultimate decision was we were not going to let her go. We're going to keep her. And the reason for that is if I got sick, Donna was my backup. If Donna got sick, I was her backup. If I let her go, the chances of the health of being able to find an aide easily is slim to none. And so that was a calculated risk we were willing to take. My mom's Italian, and so she struggles with not seeing the family. And we were hosting Easter dinner for about 22 people, cousins and then mothers and fathers of cousins. And she was very disappointed, but she was also really clear that this was not the time to do it. So what we did instead is we had a family Zoom call, and we actually did it on Saturday instead of Sunday because I thought, there's going to be so many families over Easter who are visiting that way. Let's try not to, tie up Zoom even more. And we had a wonderful visit with the family for about an hour and a half. And that really started a way of socializing from a mother we had never done before. So we've done multiple Zoom calls. My brother and sister-in-law live in North Carolina. We've Zoomed with them. We've Zoomed with friends of mine who adore my mom. Even my best friend from first grade that my mom hasn't seen forever, and they live in New Hampshire, we did a call together, right? And let me tell you something, because my mom can't get out easily, this is something we will continue to do. We will continue to have Zoom calls with folks that she otherwise wouldn't see or get a chance to talk to. again, there were some tough decisions. Did we go to the wound doctor? What did that look like? We have started to open up a little bit. We went out for a drive last Saturday because it was so beautiful, and we stopped at a cousin's house and did the mask, and we were in the car and we socially distanced, that whole thing. And then on Sunday, we actually had a family friend over who, because of a compromised immune system, has really been keeping herself safe, and she knew we were as well. And we had our Memorial Day picnic in the living room, socially distanced. It was just the three of us. My Prill and I went out for a little while to get some sunshine. My mom rested a little bit. So it has really changed the way we interact with people in a way that's hard for both of us. But I'm also grateful that I continue to be my mom's caregiver, because that's a good socialization time for both of us, because I'm isolating, because I'm my mom's caregiver. I can't put her at risk.
Right. I think this whole thing has taught us how to, or given us the ability to keep in touch with more distant family members that we don't see as much. So this has provided an opportunity for us to figure out how to do that. So that's Zoom, that's a good way to keep even the more distant family still with a close relationship with the person that has to isolate maybe more than other people do. Are there any other things that they can do? Or what if your loved one, you sound like you have a very strong relationship with your mom, you could get to visit her, but what if she was in an assisted living facility? What do we do in those instances?
That is so incredibly hard. My heart breaks for those families. They really do. Because I'm in the elder care space, I do a lot of networking with organizations. And in fact, I recently wrote a blog post, one about what skilled nursing facilities is doing and the other about assisted memory care units. As much as there's a lot of bad press, I will tell you that those people are working so hard and overtime to really can figure out what this new normal looks like, and then make it as best as they can for folks living in facilities. Zoom is something that can be done, and FaceTime and Skype can be done with your loved one in a facility. Does it change being able to be with one another? No, but at the moment it's what we have. Most of those facilities are using their own equipment to do that, their own phone, their own iPads. And they're really, and this is interesting, they're really trying to accommodate people. Like, you could have one family with 3 kids and everybody wants a different time, right? They're not cohesive the time that they're together, which is hard on them, but they are doing that. So depending on the facility, definitely do some kind of social, social seeing one another through Zoom or Skype or FaceTime. Some facilities are allowing you to send things in. They'll hold on to it. They will do that. I know a lot of facilities, if you call and say, it's my mom really loves an Asian pear, can you get her one? They will really try hard to do that. I think the biggest thing is lots of phone calls, check-ins, all times, being honest about your emotions, and really trying to understand their mental health. I mean, one of the really good, if there's good coming out of this, is the whole telemedicine, telecounseling thing that's happening. By the grace of God, that is not going to go away. Medicaid will pay for your loved one to talk to a counselor, right? So if you're really feeling that they are not dealing with this well, then look into that. Get some professional help for them, even while they're in a facility.
Okay, that's great advice. So you're kind of on the front lines with this as well, in as much as you have your pulse on what's going on day to day. Where this is not going to magically disappear, even when the restrictions are lifted somewhat, it's not magically going away. Where do you see us, the elder community, those people that are advocating for the elders, where do you see this going as far as care is concerned? Do you anticipate that people will try to keep their loved one home a little bit longer? And then what does that look like for someone, maybe a child that is trying to still have a relationship with their spouse, have kids, care for mom or dad? are they going to go back to assisted living facilities or even independent living facilities, given that there's so many more people surrounding them? Kind of where do you see more the caregiving going at this point?
Yeah. Boy, it's interesting times, isn't it? Isn't it? I think my heart tells me we're at a real tipping point, a huge tipping point in the elder care space. And I think that, I do think that some families will choose to keep loved ones home and make that work in a way that they haven't before, or for longer, which is going to really impact. I mean, you've got Christopher in New Jersey. You know, you can't turn a corner without finding an assisted living or a memory care or a skilled nursing facility. So I think they're going to have to really rethink and figure that out as a facility, and realize they're going to have to weather a storm for a little while of people not feeling comfortable with it, right? There's going to need to be a lot of marketing and a lot of changes and really getting that stuff out there. I do think people will keep families home longer. And so here's the other tipping points, right? I think it's very interesting that because people have had to work from home, that companies are finding out that, yes, this actually works, not needing to be in an office full time. I don't think that's going to go away either. I think companies are going to look at what they pay for real estate and what they pay for utilities and say, if we cut this workforce by a certain percentage and have them work from home, and we do a shared workspace kind of thing where they come in for team meetings, we can make this work. That idea of being able to work from home is a great one, but it doesn't stop the support that is going to be needed. And that support might be an adult daycare center. It might be having a home health person come in to help you for a little while. You know, I think the adult days are going to have the same problems that the skilled nursing and assisted living does. People are going to be reluctant. They're going to have to start to feel comfortable with it. I don't have a guess of when that's going to happen, but I'm betting at least a year. The other thing I will say that there's a tipping point in terms of the home health agency. One of the things that you and I know has really come to light is that most agencies, not so much in New Jersey, but certainly across the country, do not pay a living wage to home health aides. And so many home health aides work with multiple agencies, which has just increased the risk of them coming in your home. So bringing that up to a living wage with benefits where someone can work 8 hours a day in one home or two homes and minimize that is the other tipping point I think we're going to have. The other thing that I think is we don't really talk about is the collective grief and the PTSD that our entire country is in right now. We're so focused on the here and now and living day to day and being safe that I don't think we've taken a collective breath and realized that. And that's going to have impact for years. You know, so I go back to the Medicaid counseling kind of thing. I think that's going to be really important. Look for it for yourself. Look if your insurance will pay for it. Are there online support groups? There's closed Facebook support groups. You know, if your loved one has a particular condition like some form of dementia or Alzheimer's or chronic illness, look at those national websites and see what kind of support groups that they have and really do reach out to them. The other thing that's so interesting to me about this is how it's really highlighted what your work, the necessity for the power of attorney for finances and the necessity for the advanced directives. Because, you know, we're finding young people in the hospital on vents for a month or more. That paperwork needs to be in place for their own safety and the safety of their family. So I think there's a huge tipping point that starts in elder care, but just trickles down to all the services that touch that space.
Right. It's all interconnected. You know, it is important to have those documents in place ahead of time. We've seen a spike in guardianships because the planning wasn't done. So, yeah, you know, that's very important. And I agree with everything you said. I think there's going to be a lot of education that needs to be in place from the assisted living facilities, home care companies, letting people know exactly what they're doing to keep mom and dad safe. Same thing with the real estate that you pointed out. That's absolutely going to happen. I've spoken to multiple very large law firms, insurance companies. They're going to let their people work from home. There's one law firm I spoke to. they have 9 floors in a building right now. They're going to cut it back to 3. So you're going to see a big change there too. I think they are going to let a lot of these employees continue to work from home if they can. Before I ask my last question, what's one piece of advice that you can provide to caregivers and families relating to caregiving, how to keep that relationship strong without burning out the caregiver? What's something that you can relate to the audience?
I think the biggest lesson that I learned was that not only did I have to set boundaries with my mother, I had the right to set boundaries. And so one of the, there's an entire chapter in the book that really talks about that and how to do that in a loving way. I'll give you one example. When you go to have a conversation, if somebody says something to you and you get angry or frustrated or you're exhausted, take a look at where you haven't set a boundary, right? Because those emotions come up, you probably haven't set one. And then when you go to set that, be very intentional about it. And by that, I mean, think it through, pick the time and the place and think about how you want to say it. Whatever you do, don't start with the you statements. You always, you never, right? It's always, I am feeling this. This is what happened, right? So there's an absolute way of structuring those kind of conversations where you set a boundary that gives you the opportunity to make it be successful and not an opportunity to heal a relationship and not break it.
Right. And I think also to recognize is when you're talking to someone maybe with dementia or some other cognitive impairment, it's going to take a while for that to process. So when you're talking to the person, you have to give them some time to be able to process that information. So please tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your book. It's a great resource. You're providing a lot of excellent resources on your website as well. So where can everybody find you and your book?
Sure. So the website is advocateformomanddad.com. And I will tell you, it's AND and dad is spelled out. So it's advocateformomanddad.com. All the resources on there are free. There's conversations about what we just talked about in more detail. You can reach me at deb@advocatemomanddad.com. That's my email address. And if anyone wants to talk for a half hour, I'm open to a free, a conversation to just kind of figure out where you are and if I can help. And then the book is available on Amazon in both ebook and in print. And if you just search on my name, Debra, Debra, and then Hallisey, Hallisey, it comes right up, and order it and let me know what you think.
No, it's been great. You've provided so much information and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on. I'd love to have you back again soon. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. If you need to contact us, we're at brattonlawgroup.com. And thanks again, Deb, and we'll see everybody soon. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.